Have you ever met someone that should have regretted what they said? Is that person here today? Raise your hand and point. My message is titled, Wise Words, Words Matter, from James chapter 3. This is not in your notes, but I'll read it and I'm going to tell a quick story. 2 Peter 3:11. Seeing then that all these things will be dissolved, that is, this whole world, someday this whole world that you and I see will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in all your holy conversation and godliness? That's the King James Version of 2 Peter 3:11. It uses the word conversation, but the word actually is the word for living or life. Knowing that everything that we see is going to be dissolved, see what kind of person you ought to be with your lifestyle. But for some reason, the King James Bible mentions our conversation. How many of you know that our words reveal who we are? Right? This isn't in your notes either, but it's worth writing down. Right thinking creates right words. Good thinking creates good words. Good words create good thinking. And all of that impacts who we are and those who are around us. Young man was working at a grocery store. Sharp young man. And a lady came in and she said, "Young man, I don't need a whole head of lettuce. I'd like to just buy a half head of lettuce. Is that possible?" And he goes, "I never heard of that. I don't think so." He goes, "Oh, let me go ask the owner." And so he walks back to the back where the produce department things were kept, and there was the owner. And he looked at the owner and he said, "There's this crazy dingbat woman who wants to buy half a head of lettuce. Do we do that?" And the body language of the owner was like there was something wrong. He looked back here, and there was that lady. And the young man goes, "But this nice little old lady would like to buy the other half. Is that okay?" Wise words, words matter. Well, later on that day, the owner got with this young man and said, "You know, you really came out of that smelling pretty good. You were in trouble." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You know, you might have potential in the retail management business. Tell me more about yourself." He goes, "Well, where are you from?" He goes, "I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania." He said, "Well, tell me about Lancaster." He says, "Well, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that's Amish country. It's beautiful. The rolling hills, the farms. It's just a great, gorgeous place to visit." He goes, "Well, what else? Tell me more about Lancaster." He goes, "Well, it sounds strange, but we're just known for our ugly women. They're just ugly. We don't know why. Genetics, but they're Europe. We don't know, but they're just ugly." He goes, "Well, tell me more." He goes, "Well, our hockey teams, though, boys and girls, men and women, they are phenomenal. They're just beautiful people. They play beautiful hockey. They play hockey the way hockey was supposed to be played." And then I said, "Well, that's interesting." He goes, "I don't know if you knew, but my wife's from Lancaster, Pennsylvania." He goes, "Really? What hockey team did she play for?" I thought that was funny. Okay, wise words, words matter. Why don't we begin each day with these two commitments? I will watch my words. That means guard your tongue. Today, what comes out of my mouth will build people up and advance the kingdom of God. Wouldn't that be wonderful? We could go home. Purposeful speech and the wise use of words is the topic of this message. Now, we'll have enough time to go through a lot of this message, maybe not all of it, but there's two other things you need to know about words, and I'm going to have Noah come up in a minute and explain the second part of this. He shared a story with me that I think is really relevant to this. But the first point is, remember, Satan's first deception, he was the first deconstructionist. He deconstructed what God had said about the fruit and the tree, right? And he asked the question, did God really say? See, that's the challenge of the church right now. The devil's asking these questions. Is this Bible really the authority? Did God really say? That's deconstructionism. We're in the middle of that. But then the other thing that's going on, there's a last days deception of words being redefined. We've all experienced that. And here's an example that I want to share. This was in Breakpoint, and this just to make the point. So they're talking about how definitions are changing, and this is the original definition of discernment in 1828, the first American dictionary. Listen to the definition. It's the power or faculty of mind by which it distinguishes one thing from another, as truth from falsehood, virtue from vice, acuteness of judgment, power of perceiving differences of things or idea, their relations and their tendencies. The difference between good and bad, discernment. The new definition of discernment is this in the New Dictionary: the ability to comprehend or grasp what is obscure. You notice the morality part of that definition has been taken away? Therein lies the problem with speech today, with deconstructed words and then also redefinition of words. But going back to this notion, good thinking creates good words create good thinking, and with that it can change us and the world around us. And Noah has a story, if you don't mind coming and sharing this story, that for parents, for teachers, anyone that deals with people in a supervisory capacity, a pastor, what Noah's going to share is something really important, I think.
Yeah. Just
here so we can get John.
Just a story that I heard. So I don't know the person, and I actually don't even have the name, but you could look it up on the internet. But it's a story of a young man growing up in a single-parent household, really in a lot of trouble, and he's troubled. He's failing out of school. He's not doing well. He's got the wrong friends. He's been in trouble with the law. All these type of things, right? So he's in a hard place in life. He's going into his junior year, and he's got to take the SATs. And his mom says, "Hey, look, you've got to take them, and you got to try your best." And so he says, "Okay, I'll give it my best." And as you can imagine, a kid being troubled like this in school has heard things. Words. What would you expect this kid to have heard in his life? The words that he's heard. Oh, why are you doing all these things? And what, why are you failing? Why, all the things that he would have most certainly heard. And so as the story goes, he takes the SATs and he gets the score back. And if you know the SATs, they score out of 1,600. 1,600 would be, off the charts brilliance, perfect score. Well, he gets his score back. It's a 1460. Very, very, very high score for a kid that's flunking out of school. So, of course, he first hears a negative word. Well, that couldn't have been you, right? That's some language. And then he said, well, look, I tried to cheat. I couldn't cheat. It was too hard, all this stuff. He said, no, I took the test, seriously. I couldn't even do it. So, as you can imagine, wow. Then people start to say, teachers start to think, you know what, maybe we missed it with this kid. He's obviously brilliant. So they start treating him a little bit differently, right? They start encouraging him a little more. His mom's going, you're a genius. You're incredible. You scored one of the highest scores in the nation. You are brilliant. You need to apply yourself, and encouraging him. And he starts to think, you know what, I'm a 1460. So he starts going to class. He changes his friends because they're not going to class. So now he's got new friends, and he's staying after school doing different things, thinking I can do this. I can do this. And teachers are giving him extra help, going, this guy's brilliant. And so he's starting to get stuff, and he works hard, and he does better his senior year. But he's still not there yet, right? So he goes to a junior college, or a community college, a small college, and he's still getting better, and he's getting more encouragement, and people are still talking him up. He's the guy that got the 1460 on the SATs, and all these things. He goes to, finally keeps working up, does another 2-year college, then goes to a 4-year college, goes on to the Ivy Leagues, and ends up becoming an entrepreneur. Does a bunch of successful businesses, ends up sticking as one of the most successful magazine entrepreneurs in the world, huge companies, thousands of employees, and as he talks about this, he says, okay, so what's the point? And some people would start saying, okay, the point is he was always super smart and he needed a test to tell him that he was super smart. Maybe, right? We've kind of heard those types of stories. And well, the interesting part of the story is 13 years after he graduates high school, he's got all the success now. He gets a letter in the mail, and the SATs periodically do a review and an audit of all the SATs that have been taken. He was one of 13 people sent the wrong SAT scores. So, in fact, he had scored a 740, which is awful. And so he credits, not that he was all that smart to begin with and just needed to apply himself, although he did need to apply himself. He credits people starting to speak to him like he was a 1460 scorer. and people speaking that life into him, he started to believe it, he worked hard, and that brought about actions in his life that made him a 1460. So it's just a cool example of how the words of encouragement can really get you something.
So doesn't it make sense then that we as a church would be saying those kinds of things to ourselves individually as well as to each other, and even as we approach this world? This world so needs the gospel, and they need the positive aspects of the gospel. Now, part of the gospel is the fact that we are all sinners, but we can share that in winsome ways that make the gospel attractive, not to push people away, but to draw them in. So let's use our words wisely and think about them as we go through some more of these verses, okay? Let's keep moving on. Words matter. How wise are you with those words? Used for good or bad, of all the abilities God gave mankind, speech may be the most influential. I double-checked this several times. Do you know how much the tongue weighs? 3.1 ounces on average. That's a pretty small organ that doesn't weigh very much. Think of what it does for good and for bad. Proverbs 18:21 says that death and life are in the power of a 3.1 ounce organ. And they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. That is, those who just love to talk, they're going to eat the fruit. Whatever comes out, that's what they're going to eat. Speak wisely. Words can hurt, and words can help. We've all said things we regret. We've also noticed the time, as Noah's story shared, times where we said the right things to the right person at the right time, and it changed everything. And I tell you this is what Jesus said. You will give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. Makes me want to watch my words. The words you say will either quit you or condemn you. I suggest that some words are better swallowed than spoken. Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the bones. Noah's story illustrates that. Words can tear down, words can build up. Worry weighs a person down. An encouraging word cheers a person up. James does not mince words. We're going to go right into 3 and 5 in chapter 3, and then we'll look at the other verses. The tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. A tiny spark can set a great forest on fire, and the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. That word is Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom, which is just on the east side of the modern city of Jerusalem to this day. There's a little highway there. I've shown you pictures of it before. It was the garbage heap. It was a disastrous place. It was a place of death and destruction, forlorn, and nobody wanted to go there. That's the analogy that Scripture gives to what our tongue can do. Oh, may we guard the words of our mouth. James 3, 1 and 2 says, brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church. For we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all make mistakes, it says. If we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and also control ourselves in every other way. This is sobering because I happen to be a teacher. There's others of you that teach as well. You know, the early church was a little bit more open than ours. If you go through the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 14, it says, how is it when you come together, each one of you has a psalm, a hymn, a word, a prophecy, a tongue, an interpretation, a little bit more of an open atmosphere. Lots of people had opportunities to speak. If you've ever been to a Quaker service, you know that the Quakers kind of wait until the Spirit falls and then people are allowed to speak. Some of you have been to churches in this town where there's not a designated speaker, more open. Well, this may look attractive to you, and I love what I do, but nonetheless, I know something. Every time I open this book, I will be judged for what comes out of my mouth. I could use words subtly to control you. I could use words to manipulate you. I could use words to worry you. Even when we shared about the property, we don't want anyone to get worried. I don't want to be misunderstood thinking that we're double-minded. We're serious about wanting the will of God. There's another way to say that. We just want God's perfect will. And the buyer, said, hey, I've had buyer's remorse before as well as seller's remorse. And he understands that. But those words matter. Do you understand? Those words matter so that we can be properly understood. And so anyone who chooses to be a teacher needs to be really careful understanding. You don't go into it slipshod or carelessly. Using one's tongue for the benefit of others and the glory of God is a sign of maturity of all things. And it's funny, many times I'll say something or I'll worry about something, and Cindy will say, I just heard a really good sermon about that last Sunday. She's talking about something I said like I'd forgotten. And I knew about this message this week, and I actually had 3 or 4 that I could tell you, but I'm not going to, notable times where I had a chance to swallow my words. And I remember leaving those situations thinking, man, oh man, I don't think if this would not have been fresh in my mind that I would have bit my tongue. My tongue is a few inches shorter this week than last week because of what I read, and that's a good thing. Too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. Does it really say that? I swear it has my initials written right behind the period. Because some of you have been with me for a long time. I have a little bit of Peter tendency. I am the early adopter of early adopters. If you've ever been to a John Maxwell seminar, I am that 1% that says, yeah, let's go. And they go, someone else says, are you sure, Jeff? No, I'm sure. And then you should have been sure. Anyway, the words of the godly are like sterling silver. The heart of the wise, the heart of the fool is worthless. The words of the godly encourage many. Fools are destroyed by their lack of common sense, i.e., with their words. Now, I was taught, when I went through my exegetical teaching courses, I actually took those. Stephen Alford, the hero of expository teaching, said, if you can't illustrate it, don't teach it. And as you look at what James does next, he clearly took the same class I did, though, a couple years earlier. I mean, his illustrations and metaphors are incredible. And they're self-explanatory. They don't have to be preached. They just need to be read. Talking about the tongue, controlling the tongue. Verse 3. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth. Mic drop. True, right? And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. Mic drop, it's true. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. But a tiny spark, as I read before, can set a great forest on fire. And the tongue is a flame of fire. You know why people fight and argue? Because someone said an inflammatory word to begin with. And that other person forgot to hold their tongue, so they said an inflammatory word back. And the reason you get flipped off so often just because the light changed and you didn't take off right away, well, maybe it's because you're on your phone. That's possible. But this world is so spiritually dry right now. We're kindling, waiting for a forest fire. And that's why just an idle word spoken create such road rage. I mean, people get shot over things that people used to just wave at each other. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm in a small town. We had one flashing light with 5 roads coming together. And when that happened, nobody tried to rush through the roundabout. You stopped and you waved at every single person. And in my town, you'd get out of the car and go talk to that person. And if someone's behind you, just wave them around and they'd wave back at you. Nobody's flipping each other off. Nobody's cussing each other out. No one's pushing the car out of the way. We're just nodding. And you had to learn how to do this. You from a small town, you're driving, you go. That's like, I love you, man. Right? That's how it used to be. Now it's like, would you hurry? My brother was in New York for years. And I kid you not, he was visiting. He lives in Overland Park now, but he was back visiting when he still lived in New York. And we were going down 23rd. The light changed green, and he honked his horn. It was still kind of red-green. I mean, it was not even green fully. I go, see, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I forgot I'm not in New York. That's what we do. James compares guiding our tongue to the bit in a horse's mouth, controlling our tongues to a ship's rudder. James compares controlling and monitoring our tongues to the potential danger of a tiny spark. And then to emphasize his point, he says, humans can tame animals, and we do, big ones. But no one has fully tamed the human tongue. The Bible has memorable examples of this failure. I mentioned Peter already. Jesus, no way are you going to Jerusalem to be hurt. No way. Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. I'll never, they'll probably deny you. Yep, probably. I know them. We've talked. But not me. Of course he did. And then James, read 1 John about love. It's incredible. But he and his brother, what did they say once when they were younger? Shall we call down fire on those Samaritans? And if you've seen the scene from The Chosen, when they wanted to do that, and they're listening to Jesus pray one day, James and John, a different James, is listening to Jesus pray about the power that Jesus had. And when Jesus done praying, Jesus looked at James and John and said, you know about the fire, the power I'm talking? I'm going to wait and not give that to you for a little while. You're not ready for it. You know. Taming the tongue requires its owner to yield to the Holy Spirit. Taming the tongue requires its owner, not its neighbor, its owner to yield to the Holy Spirit. To further urge the wise use of our tongues, James uses more metaphors. These should not need explanation. Can the same spring bubble forth both fresh and salty water? No, it's impossible. Now, some water can be confusing. I remember hiking in Colorado a long, long time ago. We're from Illinois. I see fresh water. Unless it's from a horse trough, you can drink it maybe. Well, we're in the mountains. I said, no, go ahead and drink it. Well, he was sick for 2 days. He missed white water raft and all kinds of things because there's this little worm and bacteria that lives there, you know. But normally, it's fresh water is good in those days and salt water was not, and the same spring can't produce both. Can a fig tree produce olives? No. It's a rhetorical question. The best way to control the tongue is to purify its sources. The best way for me to purify my tongue is to purify my mind and to purify my heart. From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So, what you're saying, and if you regret it, then you need to worry about your words, but you need to go first back to your heart. The foolish speak against the heavens, and their tongues try to rule the earth. How many of you know that guy? The tongue is like a sharp razor, an expert at telling lies. Words pierce like a sharp sword stuck in the side. These are Bible verses. A person's words reveal a person's wisdom. James 3:13. If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with humility that comes from wisdom. So our words and our works do go together. They're inseparable. Our words and our works and our words go together. They're inseparable. A person who is wise and understands God's ways proves it by speaking and acting wisely. An honorable person acts with the humility that only wisdom can give. It'd be good to sit and camp at some of these verses on your own in your devotion time. Verse 14. But if you're bitterly jealous and there's selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. And we actually use this verse with our children. When they would fight over a toy, Noah will probably remember a little bit. He's old, and he maybe we didn't have to do it so much with the younger ones, but you know, kids fight and they're selfish. They are. They want each other's toys, and we refuse to let that happen. Our children to this day, even though they're very different worldviews in some regards, they absolutely get along in every way. This is public. I'm on the camera and I'm looking at my oldest son, but it's true. We just don't do that. We didn't tolerate it because we said, when you do that, you activate devils in this house. And Noah knows Daddy can also be pretty emphatic. And we're not going to have any devils in this house. And so we're going to watch our words, and we're not going to let you fight over toys. And it wasn't perfect, but we use this as a discipline in our family to guide them. When I say discipline, we didn't spank them with it. We said, no, this is true. When you're fighting like that, you're activating demonic forces in this home, and we will not have any of that. That's serious stuff, isn't it? And think about in a church where those things go on. You're activating demonic forces when you're doing that. And the devil delights in it. So we shouldn't do it, right? It's carnal, it's earthly, and it actually gives the devil permission to step in. So we really have to be careful with our tongues and control them. These are earthly, carnal, unspiritual, and demonic. Wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, you will find disorder and evil of every kind, and you've all experienced it. In situations where there's jealousy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and every other kind of evil. Just activate, it just opens the door. And then James 3:17 to 18. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It's also peace-loving. It's gentle at all times, and it's willing to yield to others. One way you can translate that is conciliatory. This is not apologizing for what's good and right. You don't do that. But this is, I have to get my word in. And you know, I've admitted it to people many, many times where I'm too quick to speak. I remember a college professor that used to go here. One day, she was very honest with me. We were coordinating something on campus. I was leading the campus ministry at the time, and she said, Jeff, I respect you. I like working with you. This is rewarding, but you never listen to me. You're always thinking about the next thing you're going to say. I want to say, I'm your pastor. I asked you to help me, and you're correcting me. But I didn't say a word because I knew she was right. I knew she was right. And it wasn't that I didn't care. I just knew that I cared more about my words than anyone else's. And I share that story often. I'm grateful for it. I'm still learning the lesson. But I'm aware of it, and it's a good thing to at least be aware of it, right? So the wisdom from above is, first of all, pure. It's peace-loving, gentle at all times, willing to yield to others. Because there's some things just not worth winning. There's some arguments just not worth having. There's no fruit in the end with it. It's full of mercy and good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and in the end reap a harvest of righteousness. Primarily, the wisdom from heaven is pure. As a result, it's also peace-loving, gentle, conciliatory, full of mercy, and rich in kindness. James stresses, stop using ambiguous words. Ambiguous means words that could be defined several different ways. But it's done to actually manipulate and massage a situation. You know what I'm talking about? There's people that are experts at doing this. This will end, but by stopping that ends all hypocrisy. He concludes by urging people to use their words to plant seeds of peace, thus reaping a harvest of righteousness. And I think for the sake of time, we won't, let's have the musicians come up. I want to close with a song, but I would just want to ask these questions during the sermon to life. Let's commit to weighing our words. Are they true? Is it true? Is it fully true? Is it ambiguously true? Is it true? I mean, fully true, not kind of true, sort of true, true for you. These are really important questions about our words. Are they helpful? Will this actually contribute? Will this actually contribute? I hired a teacher back at Veritas. He just recently retired, John Scanlon. He taught Spanish. He was retiring from Topeka schools. His wife was still teaching and wouldn't let him retire. And so I needed a Spanish teacher at the time, and I interviewed him, and I could see there was no reason why not to hire him. He's a Christian guy, goes to church in this town. But during the interview, he said, they call me Dr. Barkley there. He said, Dr. Barkley, let me ask you a question. Do you have meetings? Yeah, I'm the administrator. I have meetings. You better believe I have meetings. That's what I do. I have meetings. He goes, are you going to waste my time? I didn't have to say anything else to him. This fast I thought. Now, I haven't always fulfilled that here, but our meetings actually are pretty efficient. It's efficient, more efficient now than they've ever been, I think. Yeah. By the way, I've really never chaired any of the elder meetings, just so you know. We're not set up that way. But the minute he asked that question, you know what I said to him? I said, John, you will get an agenda before every meeting. It'll be 1 hour long, and if you want to stay and talk more afterwards, that's great, but I'll leave with you in 1 hour. He goes, I'll take the job. And I'll tell you, I never had happier teachers in my entire life. Pam, do you remember that? Pam was a teacher for me for a year. Not for me, but for the school. Are they true? Are they helpful? Are they necessary? Are they necessary? This was going to be the sermon. I decided just to put it in Sermon to Life, so don't say, that's another good sermon you're preaching, Jeff. I'm not going to do that. But words can be destroying. They can be disguising. They could be disgusting. I didn't put that in there. They can be discerning. They are directing always, for good or for bad. Wow, I didn't know you were so smart. I'm going to help you really succeed. Maybe you don't even have to say that, but they're directing. And words confirm identity. Words confirm identity. You're stupid. You're brilliant. You can do this. So how do your words measure up? By these standards that we just shared today. How do your words measure up? We're to watch our words, weigh our words, measure our words. And my closing thought is simply this. Let's just use our words for good. And for some, that may be a brand new commitment. Seriously, a brand new commitment just to use your words for good. Let's be daily committed to building up others and advancing the kingdom of God with our words. I've quoted it, but I've never really fully agreed with it. Preach the gospel every day, and if necessary, use words. I understand about the lifestyle, but words are important. God invented speech, and He wants us to use it as a tool for His kingdom, doesn't He? Okay, let's worship before we go home, sing a song, and as we do, let's consider the words that come out of our mouth in the days and weeks ahead. I think we could